Dr. Pam, and this is our Go Live with Dr. Pam. So we are here today to really answer any questions that you might have regarding any of the tests. So the goal is that we are here to help you pass the test. So if you haven't met me yet, it's Dr. Pam Turner, and I am the owner and the CEO of Academic Coaching for World Changers. Our goal really is to really help you pass this test. We believe in one and done. Great. So then it took me a little bit to get on to understand how this works, but I'm going to be on for a bit and really kind of just do some overall conversation and just to see if I can answer any questions. So one of the things that we really talk about is the importance of it being a reading test. It is a reading test. It is an absolute reading test. I see you guys logging in. If you have any questions, feel free to just put in my chat box any questions that you want me to specifically answer. We do tutor to all the tests, so I am definitely looking for questions on particular tests. Is it Jaflin? So that coach is no longer with us. What test are you planning on taking? I can give you some tips on that test in particular. We tutor to the NCE, all the LCSW, all the social work exams. We also tutor to the CACD, any of those drug and alcohol exams. So we really do all of them. When it comes to learning, it is the bottom line is theory is theory is theory. It doesn't matter. Freud is Freud is Freud. Whether I learn Freud from a psychologist viewpoint or I learn Freud from a social work viewpoint, the bottom line is Freud is psychodynamic. So when I'm looking for a question, what I know is anything that comes from the unconscious is going to be a Freudian question. So psychodynamic is what we use now. Psychodynamic means it is going to be short and sweet, 12 weeks. Psychoanalytic is where it first started. Psychoanalytic was Freud said, come lay on my couch and you can pay me forever and we can figure this out. So Freud is our father of talk therapy. We all know he might have been a little bit crazy. There's some other things always floating around about him. But the bottom line is he was the first person that said, let us talk to people. Nobody ever said, let's talk to our therapist. So again, no matter what you learned growing up, he really taught us how to talk to people. And one of the things that you'll see on all of the test questions is really looking at how to answer the questions. But I have to know content. So if I'm talking about Freud, Freud is the sex guy. He's the only guy that ever talked about sex. So he is a true Freudian or true psychoanalytic. When we see the term neo-Freudians means that they are not sex. So Freud believed in the id and the superego, right? The id and the superego were fighting back and forth. My id is my pleasure principle. Oh, right? Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. Eat, sleep, and procreate. My superego is the angel. The angel is always trying to push me down. No, right? Be perfect, Pam. But my id is the one that really is the devil. And my ego is where it comes from. So if we talk about ego defense mechanisms, I know that the job of the ego is to push both of those down. Okay? So again, I can always go through questions with you, but I really just want to kind of look at some content and how we answer the questions. I'm going to pull up a couple of examples here. And remember, we teach to all the tests, so it doesn't really matter which test you're taking, and we need to understand how it works. And it is a reading test. You have to know your content, right? But you also definitely need to know what is the question asking me. So let me see here. I think I can share my screen. Okay. While I do that, I will just keep talking in general as I figure out how to share my screen here. This is my first time going live. Can you tell? Oh, yeah, I know. So let's see here. I am not sure how to share my screen on this one. But let's see here. I can put a test question in your comment box, and that'll really help us learn how to answer some of the questions. So it really doesn't matter which test you're taking. It is still just a reading test. And our goal is to understand the test questions so we know what they're asking us. I have lots of people that spend tons and tons and tons of time studying. And I know what I know just because I've been doing this forever is because the people I work with are the smartest people ever. They really are. And I know that because they don't know how to study. One of the things that we talk about is the importance of how long you need to study. And studying really means it's up to it is spending, we say 90 days, 3 hours a day. I know. I don't have time, Dr. Pam. You also don't have time to keep taking the test over and over and over again. That gets pretty expensive, doesn't it? So if we really look at learning how to take the test, it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. You have to know content, but the goal is to learn what they're looking for in the question. How does the test want me to answer the question? And I'm going to just put a test in the question box. So, oh, Shayna, hey, I hope you're doing okay. You've been in my thoughts and my prayers, and I know that Monday's a holiday for you, so you'll be in my prayers. I'm going to put this test question in the chat box, and we can all look at it. Can you see that question in my chat box, guys? It says number 6, okay? And if you can't see it, it's in the chat box. So if you're commenting, hopefully you can pull that up. It says a therapist receives a referral for a 32-year-old woman who has a history of depression, low self-esteem, and during the initial session, the social worker or the therapist notices that the client fails to make eye contact, speaks softly, and often appears to be lost in thought, going for long periods of time without speaking. Okay? So then it concerns me that she goes for long periods of time without speaking. With anyone in general, it's okay to be silent. If you ask a client a question, and I know especially when you're a new counselor and it's first starting, oh my gosh, I ask a person a question and they say nothing. They don't give me one answer at all, and I'm freaking out they didn't say anything. So most often what I do is I'll continue to ask questions. If it is a brief moment of silence, it's okay. It's really okay. But in this question, if we go back to the question, it says it's a long period of silence, and they appear to be lost in thought. So what we always teach is to make sure that you spend lots of time understanding the question before you go to any of the answers. Okay? So then, again, Renita, you said substance abuse. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, where in the question do you see substance abuse in that question? And no matter what you do, if you decide to tutor with any of us, any of my staff, we're always going to ask you, how do you know? What words in the question prove that to me in the question? So I'm going to tell you, substance abuse is not my choice. I don't see anything in the question about substance abuse. Let's go back. She's 32. She has a history of depression and a history of depression, low self-esteem. Okay. Guys, my dogs are not going to be okay with me. I will be right back. I'm going to put these dogs up. I apologize for that, guys. I will always tell you that I'm a single mom, and I have no, I'm a single grandmom. All my kids are grown. No one lives in the house but me and my two Shih Tzus, and I fed them. I did everything right, and of course, they decided they wanted to be on camera as well. But I just want to stay with that question, okay? So a therapist receives a referral. I know that she's a 32-year-old woman. She has a history of depression, suicide, and low self-esteem, or suicide ideations, right? During the first session, the therapist notices that she doesn't make eye contact, often appears to be lost in thought, and going for long periods of time without speaking. There's nothing in that question that recommends or even suggests substance abuse. That's not an option. It's a reading test. Hello, Arnisha. Thank you for joining us. It's a reading test. If they wanted me to think that it was going to be any kind of suicide or any kind of substance abuse, they would tell me. It's a reading test. Okay, so let's go through. So the way that I teach you to test, to answer test questions, no matter no matter when you're with me or what test you're taking, we're always going to follow the same rules, okay? Understand the question. What is the question asking me? Spend more of your time in the question than in the answers, okay? So then I see substance abuse, autism spectrum disorder, a personality disorder, and a history of trauma. We're always going to rule out what can it not be. So I don't have enough proof in the question for it to be substance abuse. I just don't. Hi, Tia. How are you? I miss you too. I see you're doing great. And I love your kids. I keep following you. Your kids are amazing. And then a personality disorder. Personality disorders are ingrained. I've been this way since childhood, right? So if we look at like our borderline personalities, are antisocial are serial killers. They are not asocial. Antisocial, they're the ones that will kill you, okay? Conduct disorders when they were little, they grew up, and now they're anti-society rules. So I'm not seeing a personality disorder in that because I don't see a lifespan of it happening. So I'm taking out A and C. Now I'm between B and D. Autism spectrum disorder. Okay, she's 32, and she has a history of depression, low self-esteem, suicidal ideations. Those don't match with an autism spectrum disorder. So those of you pick the history of trauma, that is the exact right answer. Okay, did I mention it was a reading test? It's a reading test. That is the goal. We're going to go back to the question and figure out what are they asking me based on what the question is asking me. Okay, it is a reading test. When it comes to the code of ethics, for all of my professions, pretty much the code of ethics is the same. I'm going to use, again, a social work question, but I'm going to go ahead and put in some NCE questions and some other questions as we go along. But this one, again, in the chat box is another social work question or therapist question. I use the same test material for everybody because some of the things are going to be exactly the same. So this one says, during a therapy session, a client states he recently found out his partner is having an affair. It's on, right? He is furious and angry. He says he wants to do something to get back. I'm going to get back at that woman. I'm going to get back at that man. Watch me. So then, what should I do first? Okay, so whether it says first or not, in any of the questions, you're always thinking, if a client is sitting in front of you, what would you do first? Okay, so he's sitting in front of me, and he's saying, you know what? I'm gonna get her. I'm gonna get him. It's on. I'm gonna get him. Now, all of us might have thought that, right? But we all didn't act on it. Right? Okay, I might have had some things about, I'm gonna get you, but we don't always act on it. So the question I need to figure out is he gonna act on it? Or is she gonna act on it? So let's look at our 4 choices. Again, before we answer any of the questions, we spend more time in the question before we look at any of the answer. Okay? So then, A, ask questions to clarify the client's statement. B, remind the clients with the limits of confidentiality. C, notify the authorities and the partner according to the Tarasoff Act. Or D, assess the client for a history of abuse. So then, the Tarasoff Act is different than duty to warn. In every state, no matter what mental health profession you are, you have a duty to warn. Right? You're supposed to warn that person if you know something's going to happen to them. This started off with the University of in California, UC Berkeley. Podar was a student. He was an Indian student, by the way. I'm pretty sure he's still alive. He got after the case, he got sent back to India. And I'm pretty sure he's married and living happily. I haven't researched him in the last 2 or 3 years, but last time I researched him, nothing had changed. So, but it's straight out of UC Berkeley. This is what happened. The college counselor knew that this man was in love with this girl and that he wanted her. And if nobody wants you, if I can't have you, nobody's going to get you, right? So that was his theory. So then, when it talks about terrorist off act, it specifically says warn the client. Every state has a duty to warn either the client or the police. Okay, but in this one, what am I going to say to the police? Oh, my client said he's having an affair and he's going to get back at her. The first thing they're going to ask me is, what's he going to do? I don't know what he's going to do. I have to assess first. So before I do any of those other things, I'm going to assess, right? Let's figure out, what does he mean? If he has a plan, if he says, hey, you know what, Dr. Pam, I've got a gun in my office or a gun in my car and it's fully loaded, that's a very different question than saying, well, I might just kill her. So if they have a plan, we definitely know we have to act on that plan. That is not one of the options, right? We just have to act on the plan. If they're telling me that, I need to warn the client. I need to warn the client or the police, depending on your state. Okay, but the test questions really are not they're not trying to get you. I saw someone put in the chat box. Their response was, let me go back to that. The response, somebody said D. And that talked about their history of violence. I wanted to look at this question. Okay. So this question says, which of the following is the strongest predictor of future violence? So in that last question, we looked at that, we didn't ask if he had a history of violence or not, because violence and domestic violence aren't the same thing. There are many people who go to work every day and they live their job and they do what they're supposed to do, and no one ever know that they are a perpetrator of domestic violence. If you look at research now, for many, many years, we sent people to anger management. They do not need anger management, right? They're not going off on the police. They're not going off on their boss. They're not. They are picking on people that are smaller or more fragile than they are. So just because someone doesn't have a history of violence doesn't mean that they're not a perpetrator of any kind of domestic violence. Okay, let's just want to clarify that. So the question was, what is the strongest predictor of future violence? Of course, past violence. Past violence. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. But that first question before that, we weren't asking about any of those things. The question was not about whether or not he had a history of violence. So I just want to make it very clear that because someone is violent to their intimate partner, IPV, intimate partner violence, it does not mean they have a history of violence. It does not mean that they have been beating up other people. And most often, the newer systems, the newer court systems, the newer people that have been really trained on what it looks like, we're very aware that it really, really is not about anger. It's about power and control. And that's really what it's about, is power and control. Okay, again, I want to put some more questions in there, guys. Let me pick up another one. If you know the stages of domestic violence, that matters. So what we know is what happens is, first of all, the tension builds. right? The tension builds, and you can feel, the partner can feel that, hey, you know what, it's about to get bad. So what we want to do at that point is, if we can do something to lower the tension, it's great. I have read stories where many times the partners will go ahead and do something because they know that the tension is going to happen, the battering incident is going to happen. The goal is the battering incident happens, and then the honeymoon period. And it'd be great if partners would just leave. It doesn't usually happen that way, does it? What we know, it's about 7 times before the incident happens before people actually leave, whether it's male or female. Okay, that's a tough population to work with. But what we know is one of the reasons people leave, it's called the social exchange theory. The social exchange theory looks at like Lady Liberty. So we will all stay in relationships that I'm benefiting from. Yeah, she might beat me a couple of times, but, she's paying the rent and she's paying the mortgage and she's taking care of the kids. But when it flips to the other side and it's costing me more that I am getting out of this relationship, that's when I'm going to leave. And that is with every relationship. It's called the social exchange theory, but it's particularly when people will leave a domestic violence situation, when the scales flip and it's costing me too much. Let's talk about real world in your job, right? A job you don't like, you will stay if they're paying you really, really well. But the minute it stops paying you so well, you're like, right? Maybe I don't want to do this. So I can download that picture. I probably can't. It's just the website. That's the link on the social exchange theory. That is the answer for when it talks about when people leave a domestic violence situation. But in general, social exchange theory says I will leave when it's costing me too much. Okay, so whether it's a marriage, a job, anything, as long as I am benefiting more, I will stay. But when it flips over and the scales of change, then I'm going to leave. Okay, let's go back to the question I just put in there. Okay, so this is Carl and Valerie. They're a newly married couple, and they have recently entered couples therapy. In one of the first sessions, Valerie states, I feel like Carl is so dependent on me for everything. He doesn't have any friends or any interests of his own. I love spending time with him, but I literally feel like he doesn't have much of an identity. The statement best portrays Bowen's concept of what? So always, I'm going to spend time in the question. So Bowen, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what did he do? Oh gosh, Dr. Brown, what did Bowen do? Bowen, you remember that mean teacher that made you do the genogram? That's Bowen. Bowen said, we pass things down. So he said that most of us today do the exact same things for the holidays that our mom and them did. That's mom and them, right? There's a great little story that talks about understanding how Bowen works. So there's a young couple, and they're recently married, and it's Christmas time, and she's making a ham for Christmas. And she cuts both ends off the ham, she seasons it, and she puts it in the pan, and the husband's like, it's amazing. Oh my gosh, it's the best ham I've had ever. Why do you cook it that way? And she's like, I don't know. That's what my mother always did. Okay. So the next year, they go to her mother's house. So the husband notices that his mother-in-law does it the same way. Cuts both ends off, seasons it, puts it in the pan, and it's amazing. And he asks the mother, why do you do it that way? What makes that recipe so good? And she says, I don't know. I've just always done it that way. So the following holiday, they go to the great-grandmother's house. Does the same thing. Cuts the end off the ham, both ends off the ham, and puts it in the oven. He says to the grandmother, this ham is amazing. Your daughter, I mean your daughter and my wife, they follow your recipe. It's amazing. Tell me what you do. Why is it so special? And the grandmother says, well, because we were poor, in order to get to the ham to fit in my pan, I had to cut off both ends. No reason. So that's what Bowen said, is so many times we follow what our family has done. We follow what other people have done, and we don't even ask why. As a college professor, I have students, and I'll say, hey, you voted this way. Why did you vote this way? And they'll say, I don't know. We've always voted this way. So the goal of Bowen is to understand that you are part of this big O ego mass, or emotional feelings. We all have the same feelings, and he wanted us to differentiate. That's the word he used. Okay, so let's go back to the question. I see a couple of answers there. So then, Carl and Valerie are newly married, and they have recently entered couples therapy. In one of the first sessions, Valerie states, I feel like Carl is so dependent on me. He doesn't have any friends or any interest of his own. I love spending time with him, but I literally feel like he doesn't have an identity. This statement best portrays Bowen's concept of what. So no matter what test you're taking, when you see a best question, that means there's probably more than one right answer. Okay, the best means there's a good answer and there's a bestest answer. That's not a word, I know, but there's a better answer. So let's go. We always do. We're going to rule out what it can't be. Okay, so mutuality means, can we all just get along? I don't see anything about mutuality in that question, so I'm going to definitely take that out. Indebtedness, being in debt to somebody, I don't see that either. So I'm between A and D, and the question is, how do I figure out between A and D which is the best answer? So let's go. This is where all of the tests are written the exact same way. They're written for you to get between A and D. You get down to 2. And most people say, I get down to no 2 and I don't know what to do. I'm lost, Dr. Pam. What do I do? You go back to the question. You go back to the question. So fusion or fusion anxiety. Did I see anything in the question about fusion anxiety? Let me see here. They're newly married. They have recently entered a couples therapy. In one of the first sessions, Valerie states Carl is so dependent. So I know that Bowen talked about fusion. Fusion anxiety would be if the husband felt like he was getting lost. The husband doesn't say that, does he? He's not complaining about that. So the better answer for that one is just going to be fusion. It's not fusion anxiety. Fusion anxiety would belong if the partner said, oh, you're sucking me into your family. I can't stand this. A couple of other things about Bowen. So Bowen said, again, we're one big old ego mess. We're a mass. We have the same feelings. He wanted us to emotionally cut off. Emotional cutoff is not necessarily a physical cutoff. So we can move away physically, or we can just live next door and emotionally decide that I'm not going to be part of this mess. I grew up in a very, very fused family, a very enmeshed family, and enmeshment belongs to structural family therapy, but it was fused because it was generations. I grew up with aunts and uncles, and we grew up on family property. And there really was not a very clear set of rules of who said what to who. So what Bowen said is, just because, again, I say just because mom and him did it doesn't mean that I need to do it. If you watched any of my videos, I'll talk about one of the times that my first cousin, okay, and you clearly see I'm African American, dark, right? We lived in the South, grew up in the South. One year, my first cousin, brought broccoli. Not fried broccoli, not broccoli dipped in fat, not broccoli, just broccoli to the family Thanksgiving dinner. Ah! Because that is definitely not what most African American families do on the holidays. So she definitely took a huge step. She tried to differentiate from the family and looking at making choices that were healthy as opposed to following along with that family tradition. Most of us today follow along with the same traditions that mom and them did, grandmama and them did, things like that. So the goal of any kind of genogram is to look at those patterns and then look at, oh, do I need to keep repeating those patterns? Another thing that Bowen said is interesting is he said that if you come from a family that is that if you come from a family that is not differentiated, you come from a very close family, then it's more likely that you're going to marry someone in that same type. So if you can't make a decision without your parents being involved and your uncles and aunts and everybody, then you're probably going to marry someone in that exact same type of family. So two people who are differentiated, who really know who they are, then yes, it's fusion alone. Absolutely. Okie dokie. Here we go again. Okay. So then, crisis is crisis. Again, I don't know if you're taking the NCE, the LMFT, in the social work exams, the drug and alcohol exams. I tutor to all of them. My staff tutors to all of them. So then, this is those wonderful accept questions. Oh, we hate those, right? I don't know what to do. So when it comes to the accept questions, 3 of these are right, 1 is not. That's simple, okay? When it's the regular questions, I teach you to make sure that you rule out 2 that it cannot be. But an accept question, what I want you to focus on, what of the 3 are right, okay? And all of the following represent appropriate coping mechanisms to teach a client in crisis, except. So 3 of these things are things that I would do. Which is the one that I would not do? So let's go through all of my answers. We always want to understand what it means. So cognitive restructuring belongs to CBT. That's Beck. Beck says, I'm going to change your stankin' thinking. And that's stankin', S-T-A-N-K, right? Stankin' thinking. That's what Beck said. We're going to change your stanking thinking. He said that depression is not real. He's always going to use that Socratic questioning model over and over again. So why do you believe you're depressed? Why do you believe that? Okay. Prescribing the symptom, that term belongs to strategic family therapy. Strategic family therapy is when I come in and I have a problem. And what I'm going to do is I am going to then, you can only use prescribing the symptom, or those are, it's an umbrella of paradoxical approaches. You can only use those when you've done other things. Okay, so I'm working with a family, and I've got a family, and I've got a 15-year-old. And the 15-year-old, she won't come in at night. Their presenting problem is like she won't follow the rules. It's Tuesday night. She's out partying with her friends. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all weekend. She doesn't come in all the time. She won't do her homework. All of these things. I have given the family interventions. I've said, hey, have you thought about maybe taking her car keys away? Taking her phone away? Right? Locking the door if she's past curfew. The family has done nothing. So finally, I'm going to say to them, well, you know what? Since this doesn't seem to bother you, what I want you to do is just go out and buy the drinks. Have all the kids come to your house on a Tuesday night, buy all the alcohol, let them all spend the night. The goal of prescribing the symptom or the paradoxical approach is I want the families to realize either make an intervention or let it go. Okay? So, and most of my clients and most of you have used that before, but haven't used the verbiage. That belongs to strategic family therapy. So so whatever they came in for, and I've offered them other interventions, they've done nothing, fine. Go home and just let her do whatever you want to do. It's reverse psychology. That's all it is. It's reverse psychology. C is pleasant activity scheduling, and D is deep breathing. So 3 of these things I would do in a crisis. So remember, the goal of crisis intervention always is to get them back to their prior state of functioning. A crisis happens to all of us. I lose my job. I lose my house. I lived in Maui and my house caught on fire. Tornadoes, hurricanes, all of those things are crisis. So when I'm doing crisis intervention, my only goal is to get them back to their prior state of functioning. So then 3 of these things I would do, and 1 thing is I would not do. Okay? Would I do cognitive restructuring? I would. I would help them see the problem differently. Yes, I realize that you lost your house. I realize that your husband divorced you. I understand that. However, let's look at the fact that, you know what, you've got friends standing, you'll get insurance money, all of those things. I definitely would do pleasant activity scheduling. When there's a crisis going on, I'm going to talk about, hey, yeah, your husband died, your wife died, you lost everything. So how can we do some self-care and deep breathing? The one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to prescribe the symptom. Oh, okay, you lost your house in a fire because you lived on Maui, or a hurricane came through and you lost everything. Yeah, just go back and relive it. No, I'm not going to do that to a client. That was an accept question, and a lot of my clients really struggle with accept. The way that we answer the accept questions is looking at what 3 things will I do. Okay, so 3 things I will do and something that I won't do. And in this particular question, I won't do that. That is not okay. Okay. If you don't understand the question, feel free to answer in the chat box. I'm trying to keep an eye on it so I kind of know who said what, and I'm going back and forth to making sure I don't miss anything. Okay, so if I miss it, definitely go back and put it back in the question again. So the answer to that last one was B. The one I would not do is prescribe the symptom. I'm in a crisis. I'm not doing that. Okay. So then, this one talks about what is the best example of a client. What is the best example of asking a client the miracle question? So I always say, spend more time in the question than you do in the answers. If you're not sure what the miracle question is, and you're doing a study guide, you're going to go back and Google it. Put in miracle question plus psychology. If there's ever a term that you don't know, go back. You can Google it, but don't Google it based on what everybody else says. You want to Google it based on our profession. Counseling, social work, psychology, any of those things is what you want to do. So then, what I do know is that miracle question belongs to solution-focused brief therapy. So this is the only therapy that doesn't start with the solution. I'm sorry, wow. It's the only one that starts with the solution. It's the one that doesn't start with the problem. Most other therapists, most other theories, most other theoretical orientations start off with what's the problem. When you go see your doctor, he says to you, hey, Dr. Pam, what's going on? What's wrong? They start with the problem. This is the only theoretical orientation that starts with a solution. So I don't really care what the problem is. I don't care what happened when you were 5, 6, and 7. I could care less. I'm looking for the verbiage, and every theorist has the verbiage. So solution focused, I'm looking for, they're not following the medical model. It is very brief, 6 to 8 weeks. That's the miracle question or the accept question. If you woke up tomorrow and you weren't depressed, what would life look like? My client says, oh my gosh, I'd get up at 8 a.m. I'd be like singing with the birds, right? Oh my gosh, I'd be jogging at 5 a.m. Life would be great if I was not depressed. That's their 10. That's the scaling. That is their 10. Okay, so my goal is, if that's their 10, is every time they're going to come into a 10 is a number, it's a scale, right? So whenever they come in, I'm going to say, how close are you to your 10? That's it. I'm not going to ask you where the depression came from. I'm not going to ask you what caused it. I only want to know is how close you are to your 10. So let's read through all 4. And again, you're always going to follow the same process. What happens many times is we think, oh my gosh, it's the miracle question. I know the answer, and I don't really read all 4. If I haven't mentioned to you yet, it's a reading test. Standardized test. Everyone gets the exact same information. I can't bring in what happens at my agency or what my professor told me or any of those things, because everyone gets the same test. So let's go back. So let's see here. A, let's say that you finally figured out the problem. What do you think would fix it? B is, let's say you woke up tomorrow and the problem no longer existed. What do you think would be different? C is, let's say the problem becomes worse over time. What do you think the most likely culprit is? And D is, let's say you realize the problem is no longer, it has an intense hold over you. How much of the hold do you think would be reasonable? Every theorist has their own verbiage. That's the key to understanding any kind of a test that is standardized. It is based on the knowledge of knowing what it says, knowing numerical question, solution focused. Okay, so I'm going to start with ruling out. I'm always going to rule out. Even if I think I know the answer, I'm going to follow the same rules. Okay, so A says, let's say you finally figure out the problem. What do you think will fix it? Solution-focused therapy does not care what caused it. We're not going to spend sessions and sessions looking at what caused it. That's a Freudian person. That's psychodynamic or psychoanalytic. A is out. B is, let's say you woke up tomorrow and the problem no longer existed. What do you think would be different? Ooh, I know that's the accept or the miracle question. I'm going to keep B in. I like that one. C says, let's say the problem becomes worse over time. What do you think the most likely culprit is? I think that's placing some blame somewhere. And solution focus would not do that. D, let's say you realize the problem is no longer has an intense hold over you. How much hold do you think would be reasonable? My best answer to that one, because it's solution focused, the miracle question is going to be B. Okay? I see most people got that right. Very good. Knowing that miracle question. If I woke up tomorrow and things were different, what would it look like? That's the scaling technique and the miracle question. Very good, guys. Very, very good. I'll put a couple more questions in there. Okay. Oh, let's see here. Let's look at this one. If there's a question you particularly want me to cover today, just put it in the chat box. I definitely don't mind. Or a question you've seen somewhere, I would say Facebook or YouTube or some other study program. Let me help you understand why it's the right answer. If you've spent any time with me at all or watching our free videos, I always say, please don't spend any more money on any test material. Don't. Most of the people that I work with own everything out there. The problem is not that you don't have the content, is you don't know what to do with the content, or you don't understand the content. And what we do is as coaches and tutors is help you understand the content. So if I ask you the difference between object permanence and object constancy, and you can say to me, object permanence belongs to Piaget. Kids who get that right at 6 months, they learn the object is still here. And object constancy belongs to Margaret Mailer. And she said, internally, I need to know that someone always has my back. That's when you know the information. So you can buy everything you want, but if you don't understand it, that's where we're lost. and the question is written at an application level, not a recall level. Okay, I know that many of you and my NCE people and my social work people, APGAR has been the Bible for the social work people, and the purple book is the Bible for the NC people. And I'm going to tell you that neither one of those are enough. Both of those are great for content. They really are great for content, honestly. But the test questions are not written like that. Who is Bob? It's not written like that. It's very vague, and I've got to figure out what they're asking me just based on the vagueness of the test. So please don't buy any more material if you're struggling. Watch our free videos, sign up with a couple of sessions with us, any of our tutors, but don't spend any more money on material. You all have it all most often. Let's look at my question. What might a CBT therapist, cognitive behavior therapist, introduce? When might a CBT therapist introduce the concept of a behavior chart when working with the parents of a young child? Okay, Tracy, there are various versions of all the tests, but they actually still measure the same thing. There's no easy or harder. They all measure the exact same thing. If you go to the KSAs, whether it's social work or the NBCC, they're KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities you're supposed to learn. That's what they're measuring. Whenever I see a test question, I want to see, what are they measuring? In this particular question, I know they're measuring what a CBT person would do based on a behavior chart. When I think, oh God, Marlena, no, never. I'm sorry. Marlena, I do not suggest that at all. If you tutor with any of us, we always provide the material. Again, great for content, and I'm pretty sure he's got lots of free stuff out there on YouTube. The problem with the purple book is I don't understand how you can separate the questions from the responses. So he doesn't, there's the questions there and the responses are totally below it. So I'm not a fan at all. Just not a fan. Okay. So then, the question is, let me go back to the question. What might a CBT therapist introduce the concept of behavior chart when working with the parents of a young child? So CBT is Beck, okay? Behaviorists are Skinner and Pavlov. Skinner said, I can change anyone's behavior with rewards and consequences. Just imagine in the U.S., right? If every time you stole something, we cut off your hand, what would happen to our crime rate? Right? I'd be walking around like I stole a piece of gum and I have no hand. So Skinner is the positive and negative reinforcement, positive and negative consequences. Remember, positive and negative aren't good or bad. It's whether you add or take away something. So when I'm thinking about a behaviorist, that's not the same as CBT. Beck is my CBT guy. Beck said, if you change the way that you think, okay, then you change the way that you feel. Angel, we have 2 bilingual coaches on our staff. And if English is not your native tongue, I do suggest that you apply for accommodations. Many times you'll find that you have doctors, lawyers, principals, teachers, whoever, that English is not their first language, and they had to pass a test in English to get a license in the U.S. So we do have 2 bilingual coaches, but I definitely also recommend that you apply for accommodations. There's some states that won't allow it. In New York, I do know, and maybe, I think Arizona, I'm thinking. Don't know for sure. I teach all across the country. But I do know if English is not your first language, that's something you need to look at, being able to bring your own dictionary. Because the problem is not the clinical terms, the problem is the everyday language. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the question again. So let's read all 4 choices. I know it's a CBT therapist, it's Beck. However, I'm working with the parents of a young children. So what would I do first? A, when the therapist and the parent, let's go back. What might a CBT therapist introduce? When might the CBT therapist introduce the concept of a behavior chart when working with parents of young children? When? So A says when the therapist and the parent want to monitor the child's behavior frequency. B, when the therapist and the parent want to motivate a child's desire for change. I'm going to take B out right now. Children have no desire to change. Right? When I ever see the desire for change, I'm thinking about the stages of pre-contemplation, right? Pre-contemplation, contemplation. Little kids don't want to change. They like it the way it is. C, when the therapist and the parents want to eliminate a problematic behavior. Or D, when the therapist and the parents want to introduce the concept of positive reinforcement. Okay? I see a lot of you pick D, and I'm going to tell you that's not true. D is Skinner. The question doesn't ask about Skinner. Skinner is the one that talked about positive and negative reinforcement. He's operant conditioning. Nowhere in that question do you see that. It only talks about a CBT therapist. When might a CBT therapist introduce the concept of a behavior chart? Okay? So that when. So I'm going to tell you that. So when the therapist, I took out D. D is when the therapist and parent want to introduce the concept of positive reinforcement. Wrong theorist. That's Beck. That's Skinner. C, when the therapist and the parents want to eliminate a child's problematic behavior. I like that, but a CBT therapist is different than a behavior therapist. A behavior therapist just wants to change everything. Right? Behavior therapist says, I could care less about what you think, what's going on. But CBT says, I want to change your thinking pattern. I want to change the way that you think. The correct answer is A on that one. Most of you went to most of you went to the behaviorist of Skinner and didn't think about Beck. Beck is CBT. The goal is with CBT, I'm changing the parents' ways of thinking. Okay? Everybody good with that? I don't know, Dr. Bam, that seemed really hard. You're making it up as you go along. I know. What? Go back to the question. Okay? So the question says, when might a cognitive behavior therapist introduce the concept of behavior chart? So if you go back and look at the other options, it says, when would I do it? Okay? So then the question says CBT. D belongs to Skinner. Beck is CBT. Beck is not going to talk about how the child behave. Beck is going to help the parents retrain the way that they think. Cognitive restructuring, change the way that the parents think. And therefore, we're going to change the child's behavior. Did I mention it's a reading test? Because what happened is many of you, and this is what happens, and I don't know who's in my group tonight. Some people I recognize names, some people I don't. But the people that I tutor in our business is what we teach you is most often to understand the question. You pick an answer and it doesn't answer the question. When you get down to 2, go back to the question. D is Skinner. There's nothing in the question about Skinner. It only talks about Beck. CBT is Beck. Okay? Okie dokie. Okay, so this is hello Rosa, how are you? Okay, so this one is a conduct disorder. This is a diagnostic question. Okay, so it's an accept question. What I'm looking for are 3 of these things are things I would do, and 1 is what I would not do. So all the following are true about a conduct disorder except which one? Read all 4 choices. Rule it down, take out 2, and then come back with my answer. Okay? I got to check on my dogs just a second, guys, so I'll give you a chance to kind of look at that one. Okay? Put your answer in my chat box. You got this. Okay. Oh, I see some answers. I see some answers. While you guys are answering, let me just make sure that you, if you haven't met me, knowing who I am, it's Dr. Pamela Janine Winton Turner. My name is this long. I am the owner of Academic Coaching for World Changers. Started off about 6 years ago as a very small tutoring company, and we've definitely grown tremendously in the last 5 years. We have an excellent passing rate with all the exams. We're looking at about a 96.5% passing rate if you follow our rules. We suggest that you study with us for 90 days, 3 hours a day, small segments. We offer individual, group, boot camps, everything you could do. We also definitely offer some payment plans because we are definitely not the cheapest, but I will say that we are one of the best, most definitely. We provide all the materials that you need. And if you haven't seen us before, go check out our YouTube channel. So just search Dr. Pam on YouTube and you'll find tons of free videos. Okay, so I'm looking at my answers. I see some D's, some B's. Oh, we're across the board. Okay, so conduct disorder, the difference between conduct and oppositional defiant. Conduct disorders I can diagnose at 6 to 16. Conduct disorders are my little kids who are poking the cat's eyes out. They're setting the cat's tail on fire. Hello, Teresa. When my middle child was young, I'm a gym rat. I've always worked out. And one of my girlfriends would go to the gym, a couple days a week. And both of our kids were 4. And her daughter taught my daughter how to pinch the babies to make them cry. Red flags. That's not normal. Oppositional defiant kids are definitely the ones that are ODD. They're not going to follow the rules. They might throw a chair at you. They definitely aren't the greatest kids. But conduct disorders have no remorse. And what I'm looking for in the question is they're always breaking the law. Conduct disorder kids break the law. And after 16, we then diagnose them as antisocials. Those become my Jeffrey Dahmers, my serial killers. No remorse whatsoever. Many of my pedophiles are antisocial. You'll find that they don't get that their behavior hurt somebody. She was 6 and she wanted it. So asocial are people that don't like people. A in front of any word negates the word. Okay? Asocial means I don't like people. Antisocials are people that are anti-society rules. Okay? So my conducts at 16 then become my antisocials. And my answer is definitely B. So antisocials, and then whenever I see that in the question, I'm looking for the test. First of all, it's not trying to trick you. Remember that? It's never trying to trick you. They're not trying to get back at you. There's no evil gods getting down on you. It's making sure you just understand what the question's asking. So conduct disorders are the kids who, again, they are the ones who are breaking the rules, stealing lunch money, bullying, things like that. Okay? If you have a question that you want to ask me, I keep kind of monitoring my chat box. But definitely you can feel free to ask me a question in there. And if I don't see it, ask it again because I just didn't see it in the chat box. Okay? So then this question talks about structural family therapy. So again, we spend more time in the question than we do in the answers. When I think about structural family therapy, ding, 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 Mnuchin, right? Mnuchin talked about enmeshed, yucky boundaries, disengaged, no boundaries. And all of our family systems, all of our family theorists talked about the importance of the hierarchy. There's not any family therapist that doesn't say mom and daddy are in charge. Mom and dad are in charge. That is the rule, okay? So then, when we look at all of our family therapists, systems theory, if you're a social worker, it's systems theory. If you're NCE or family or LMFT, it's the MRI, right? That all came together. That was the family systems theory. It broke into two schools. It broke into strategic as, not Bowen. It broke into strategic, and then it broke into structural. Structural is Minuchin. Minuchin is the one that joined your family. He came to your house and he wanted to see what was happening right now. He wanted to unbalance your homeostasis. Your homeostasis is your norm. All of us have our norm, don't we? But in the families that we work with, many times their homeostasis is not healthy. So Minuchin wanted to come in the house and rock your homeostasis. A great example of homeostasis is children that have come from horribly abused homes, right? They were sexually abused, physically abused, and we put them in foster care. When they run away, they go back. They go back to that structure. We're used to that. Enmeshment, disengaged. Minuchin joined the family. Minuchin also used the word mimesis. Put that in the chat box. Mimesis means he would mimic the family, and not a bad way, but he would try to join the family. He would try to use the words that family used. Okay, so then strategic is Jay Haley. Jay Haley and Chloe Mendez. That's where the terms double bind, not double blind. Double blind is research. Double bind is when you've got this family member and they definitely are stuck in the middle. He also used the terms first and second order change and the paradoxical. Those belong to strategic family therapy. Okay, so I see that people answered B. I'm going to tell you that is the correct answer because it's an except answer. So structural family therapists would do everything but B. Because B belongs to Bowen. Whenever I see any kind of intergenerational, transgenerational, that's Bowen. So a structural family therapist families abide by covert and overt rules. Let's understand that. Overt rules are said. These are the rules in the house. This is what you do. The covert rules are the rules that are not necessarily said. Okay? C, family systems are largely governed and established by families and rules and patterns. Yes. And then D, family systems benefit from having an effective hierarchical structure. Who's in charge? Absolutely. Remember, relabeling and reframing pretty much mean the same thing as interpreting. Relabeling belongs to strategic. Reframing belongs to structural. Reframe the house. Set up a better hierarchy. Can you guys hear my bell if I ring it? I don't think you can, but yeah, good job. Good job. I'm ringing my bell. That's positive reinforcement. Good job. Those that got that right. Very good. B does belong to Bowen. Good, good, good. I'll put another diagnostic question in there, guys. You can hear my bell? Oh, hey! Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love my bell. I love my bell. Sometimes with my headphones and what program we're using, I can't hear it. You can't hear it, but it definitely. That is positive reinforcement. When you get the question right, I'm adding something to reinforce your behavior. I like when you answer appropriately. Okay, so this one, I don't have a number on it. Which of the following is a key difference between schizophrenia form and schizophrenia? So again, even if I know the answers, I'm going to read all four of the choices. Okay. A, schizophrenia form disorder persists less than 12 months, while schizophrenia persists more than 12 months. B, schizophrenia form disorder symptoms include only positive symptoms, and schizophrenia includes both positive and negative symptoms. C, schizophreniform disorder persists less than 6 months. Schizophrenia symptoms persist more than 6 months. And D, schizophreniform disorder symptoms do not include hallucinations or delusions. Schizophrenia symptoms include hallucinations and delusions. Okay, so I'm gonna just explain it to you in general. So what we know is so if I have someone who is having a psychotic break, first of all, we really, really, really hate to diagnose schizophrenia. There's no going back from that. It's most often diagnosed between the ages of 15 and 35. Is it diagnosed later? Yes, it is. Most test questions say, though, if I'm diagnosed past the age of 40, then it's less likely that I'll have more than one. It won't happen again. Okay? What happens most of the time, what it looks like in real life, is you've got this, you send your kid off to college, and they're a little stressed, and maybe they're a little behind, and you get a call, and you're like, Dr. Pam, your kid is dancing naked in the fountain. Can you come get her? What we're hoping is it never happens again. I show up, we go see a doctor, it never happens again. Brief psychotic disorder is 3 days to 30 days. All the same symptoms, Schizophrenia, brief psychotic, schizophreniform, schizophrenia, all have the same symptoms. It's just the time frame. Brief psychotic is, we're hoping it never happens again. Oh, just please, Lord, don't let it happen again. So after 30 days, if there's another psychotic episode, so delusions are my thoughts, delusions are my thoughts, hallucinations, all of my 5 senses can hallucinate. I can taste things, I can smell things, I can see things, I can hear things, and I can feel things crawling on me. So all of my 5 senses can hallucinate. I'm really hoping it doesn't happen again. So from 1 month to 6 months, it's schizophreniform, a form of schizophrenia. If it continues after 6 months, it becomes full-blown schizophrenia. I do know that many of you work in clinics or doctor's offices or places like that where you're diagnosing someone with schizophrenia when you don't really have proof it's been at least 6 months. Unethical, but that's not a test question. I just want you know that it's unethical. It's unethical. I don't get to diagnose it at MSC. If someone is coming into my office and they are delusional or hallucinating, I can't diagnose them with schizophrenia because I don't have enough information yet. So then, brief psychotic, 3 days to 30 days. Schizophreniform, a form of schizophrenia is from 30 days, 1 month to 6 months. And then at the last point, at 6 months, it's full-blown schizophrenia. Okay. So those that you answered C, that is my correct answer. Schizophrenia has to be, schizophreniform has to be at least 6 months. Okay. Anyone want to be brave enough to enter in the chat box the difference between schizoaffective disorder? Just tell me what schizoaffective disorder is. Anybody want to share that in the comments? Come on. I'll ring my bell. What is schizoaffective disorder? Right. Schizoaffective disorder, affect, AFFECTIVE, affective disorder is a mood disorder. So if I am depressed, am anxious, I've got bipolar, all of those things are mood disorders. The affect is what it looks like on my face. So affective disorders, not quite, Marty. So affective disorders are mood disorders. So in the real world, not the test world, in the real world, most often what you'll see is in the real world, you'll see bipolar 1 with psychotic features. Because if I'm bipolar 1, I've gone 5 to 7 days without any sleep, right? I'm all the way up there. Of course I'm going to maybe hear and see things. So most often in the real world, you're going to see bipolar 1 with psychotic features. However, if we look at institutions or hospitalizations or residential facilities, I'm going to get both. What you'll see is schizoaffective disorder, which is then in my bipolar 1 episode, I have psychotic breaks. So it's 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I'm sorry. Oh wow. 2 weeks of having the highs of a full-blown manic episode and also having the psychotic features. So schizoaffective to schizoaffective disorder is most often only seen in a residential facility. I've never seen it diagnosed in a private facility. People may come in with that, but I've never ever seen it diagnosed other places. I just haven't. And I've been doing this for like 30 years. So one of the things that with schizoaffective disorders, I can diagnose you and I can treat you with both antipsychotic as well as then lithium. And that definitely has you like, right? Okie dokie. Let's get a couple more questions in, guys. Oh, let's do some of this one. Let's try this one. If you're taking my NCE, you're probably not going to see a lot of diagnostic disorders. Okay, the LPC doesn't see as many of those, and I'll put a couple questions not based on that for the next one. But if you're doing my LMFT, you're doing my social work exam, you're doing my NCH-MCE, the 5-letter exam, you're going to see more. It's much heavier in diagnostic information, knowing how to diagnose. Okay, so let's look at Mike. Mike is 49. He's a computer programmer who works from home. He's lived his entire life. He has lived alone his entire adult life. He's never been married and only briefly dated one girl in high school. He does not have any real relationship with his family, and he finds having friends pointless. On the weekends, he usually takes solo hikes and plays video games. He does not really like his job, but he states it pays the bills. Without having to interact with others. So he likes his job, but doesn't have to interact with others. Based on this information, Mike most likely meets the criteria for what diagnosis? Okay, so I've got a schizotypal, an antisocial, a schizoid, and a major depressive disorder. I'm going to take out my antisocials because I don't think he's killing anybody. Just going to say that. I don't think he's killed anybody. Antisocials are my serial killers. I'm going to take that one out. So remember, we're always going to rule out before we go. So if we take out B, my antisocials, major depressive disorder is 2 weeks. 2 weeks, can't get out of bed, having suicidal thoughts. So I'm also going to take out that one. So now I'm left between A and C. Is he schizotypal or schizoid? The key to that question is knowing that my schizoids love COVID. Many of you have a schizoid in your neighborhood. Someone who's never home, or you can't tell that they're home. No one ever answers the door. They're happy being alone. They're so happy. Schizotypals will talk to you, but you'll be sorry that they did. Schizotypals are typically more like a schizophrenic. But remember, neither one of the schizotypals or the schizoids hallucinate. Okay? Personality disorders are ego syntonic. It's in sync with their ego. So they're not coming for treatment because they don't have a problem. Ego dystonic or ego alien means I don't like this. I'm going to come because it's uncomfortable with my ego. Okay. Put a couple more questions in there. This is a diversity question. Absolutely, Marty. They avoid people at all costs. So, Marty, what's the difference between a schizoid and an avoidant personality disorder? Anybody, you can answer the test question, but what's the difference? So, schizoids avoid people. Schizotypals will talk to you, but you'll be sorry they did. But what's the avoidant personality disorder? Anybody? Come on, let me see some typing there. My avoidant people like people, but they're afraid that you'll make fun of them. My avoidant people want to be the center of attention. They want to come to that. They want to be there, but they're terrified that you'll make fun of them. So that's why they're avoidant. But they're not schizotypical. They just are afraid that you'll make fun of them. Okay? I'll put that by diversity question. Okay? So the question says, sometimes children whose parents have immigrated from countries outside the United States experience resentment toward their parent. They resent. Sometimes children whose parents have immigrated from countries outside the U.S. experience resentment toward their parents as the children have become more absorbent in the dominant culture. This process is called what? Encapsulation, ethnocentrism, acculturation, or assimilation. Now, the thing with this one is assimilation also belongs to Piaget. Piaget says in the beginning, right, a little kid sees a cat and she sees everything has 4 legs, is furry, is a cat. So she assimilates when she sees a dog. Oh my gosh, this is also a cat. And dad comes along and says, no, this is a dog. So now she has to make room in her schema, her schematic for new information. That's what Piaget would say. However, it also belongs in diversity. So I'm going to look at my choices. Encapsulation belongs to Gilbert Wren, W-R-E-N. Gilbert Wren said, I'm seeing the world through my lens. Okay? I know none of you, but some of my other people that I know, when COVID first hit, we're like, oh my gosh, them people in China, they eating bats. They nasty. It's them, right? It had nothing to do with us. We saw that culture is totally separate from who we are. B is ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is, I believe my ethnicity is the best. American. Any Dallas Cowboy fans in my room? Because the Cowboys, that's God's team, right? Diehard Cowboy fan. That's still ethnocentrism. Your ethnicity. You believe that the Cowboys are the best. I'm not here to debate that. So acculturation is adding a culture to my culture. So if I'm a first generation, I come over from any country, and I then add some American culture to my culture. That's acculturation. The second generation assimilates. So the question talks about you've got an Asian boy who backmouths his mom. He talks back to his mama. That is not okay in Asian culture. So he is assimilated. He is looking like every other American child. Okay? So my answer to that one is based on the question. The question says, some children whose parents have immigrated from the U.S. outside the U.S. experience resent their parents because the children are more absorbed in the culture. So the children have assimilated. So my answer is D, assimilation. They've assimilated as similar to Americans. Americans. So assimilation is as similar. Acculturation is what the first generation does. But remember, assimilation also belongs to Piaget. So I have to understand the difference between whether it's a culture question or whether it is a normal human development. Okay? So this is talking about a group. Oh my gosh, my NCE people will say there's 12,000 group questions, Dr. Pam. I don't know what to do. The whole test is a group. It is not. It is not. And even my social workers, yes, there are group questions. And I have to understand how group works. There's nothing wrong with the fact that group is financially good. Insurance companies like it. So let's say that if you're a provider and you know a groups are supposed to be 90 minutes and no more than 8 people. Okay? As the insurance company likes it, you can see 8 people in 90 minutes as opposed to seeing 8 people in 8 hours. So it's really okay that the fact that it is financially good for both the therapist and the insurance company. This particular question is asking me about a self-help group. So like I always say, before you look at any of the answers, I should have in mind, what is a self-help group? A self-help group means that is not led by a professional. AA is a self-help group. Okay? Because the leader of AA is sometimes called the key holder, the person that's been there the longest. Most of our 12-step groups are going to be a self-help group. The difference between that and other groups is the other groups are led by a professional leader. Okay? So I'm going to always follow the same process, even if I know the answer, even if I know this will help you pass the test. Don't just pick what you think is the answer. Read all 4. Read all 4 and rule out. So A, a group of survivors for sexual abuse led by a survivor. I like that one. B, a group led by a school counselor for parents of children in a special education setting. Nope, because led by a counselor. C, a group of parents who have lost a child led by a professional counselor. Still led by a professional counselor, right? That's my answer. Because C says it's still led by a professional counselor. Does that make sense? Is it Cairo? That's the answer. It's a reading test. Did I mention that? It's a reading test. And D, a group of individuals with a history of alcohol abuse still led by psychotherapists. The only one in that group that is not that is going to be a professional leader or is going to be the one that is led by the person in recovery. And if you know anything about AA groups, the goal of AA is always to bring someone with you. So you can study, you can get clean and all that stuff, but we always want to bring someone else with us. Okay, guys, I'm going to do a couple more questions. Is there anything in particular that you want me to cover before I'm just going to put some questions at random? Thank you, Marty. You're absolutely right. They've definitely had some experience. Okay. This is under that first chapter for most people. It's understanding early human development. And this is a question about behaviorists. Remember, Skinner is a behaviorist. Okay? Okay. A man comes in to see a social worker, therapist, counselor, whatever you're wearing, whatever hat you're wearing. A man comes in to see a social worker about a compulsion that is troubling him. Whenever someone brings up something serious, a family death, grave illness, loss of crucial job, or other major misfortunes, he finds himself compelled to resort to humor to minimize the offenses being the intense feelings involved. This has offended many people. Okay? During exploration of the problem, it is learned that the father was violently intolerant of any expression or display of negative emotion. Drawing on Pavlov experience, Pavlov is classical conditioning, right? We pair two things together. The client's compulsion can be described as what? Okay, everybody see my question? He comes to see the therapist about a compulsion that's troubling him. When he brings up something serious, he finds that he laughs at things. During exploration of the problem, it's learned that his father said, don't you ever, don't show your emotions, right? Don't be sad. Don't do any of those things. What is this described as? I know it's a Pavlov. Pavlov talked about pairing two things. So the dog, right? The dog, let's go back. The response is what my body does naturally. Dogs salivate naturally. That's what dogs do. All he did was pair it, right, with the sound. All of us have that. Your phone has rang 1,000 times. But when you work for a company and they call you and they say blah, 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 these questions, now when that phone rings, you have paired a feeling. Stress, anxiety. What do they want? So you've paired those two things. That is a Pavlovian classical conditioning. Skinner is operant conditioning. Skinner says that we learn by rewards and consequences. Okay, so I see a couple of answers here. I see I see some D's, I see some C's. Let's go back to the question, back to the question. We're always going to go back to the question. Okay. So then, what I know is whenever someone brings up something serious, he laughs. So that response is what he does. So that is a conditioned response. D is the answer. Everybody get that? He learned at an early age that I'm supposed to respond this way. And now when someone dies, he laughs, and that's because he has paired his response with that stimulus. So my answer is D. It's a conditioned stimulus. Okay. Is it Aisa? Aisa? Tell me what you think the answer to your question. Does everybody see her question? I think it's Ais Alvar Oh, I am so off with names. And I really try to be good with names. Ais Avalar Coroglia. Coroglio. Okay. So do you understand? So tell me what the question, what you think the answer is to your question. Her question she put in was, putting a seatbelt on when you get in the car to stop the dinging example of what? So I can tell you that whenever we see these questions, it's looking at the behavior. The behavior. The government wants you to put on your seatbelt, right? Seatbelt saves lives. So then it's a reinforcement because they want me to do it. But if I do what I'm supposed to do, the sound goes away. That's a negative reinforcement. The sound goes away. I know, right? A lot of people struggle with those. A lot of people struggle with those. I do have a video on positive negative reinforcement. It's not positive reinforcement because nothing was added. A negative reinforcement is because something was taken away. The sound was taken away. That is a negative reinforcement. I took something away. A positive reinforcement is I added something. So those of you that are in relationships, this is the best example. So you come home from work today and your significant other made dinner, they cleaned the house. Oh my gosh, you love everything they did. Look at this. Oh, there's dinner, clean the house, right? You like that behavior. So you want it to continue. To get it to continue, I'm going to reinforce the behavior. I'm going to reinforce it by adding or taking away. Remember, positive or negative isn't good or bad. It's plussing, which is positive, or negative, which is taken away. So if I come home today and my significant other made dinner, cleaned the house, I love that stuff. Oh my gosh. So then I'm going to reinforce the behavior. If I want to do it by adding something, I'm going to give him something, right? Something. Upstairs, but what? Something. I'm going to add something to that. Negative means I'm going to take away something that they didn't want to do anyway. Oh my gosh, honey, you made dinner. This weekend, watch football all weekend, and I won't nag. I'm taking away something that they didn't want anyway. Another example of negative reinforcement talks about, let's say that it's Friday, and your boss said, hey, Pam, you were so great this weekend. You're amazing. Take Friday off. Yes, I am. He took away something I don't want to work Friday anyway. So next week, I'm going to work really, really hard because I want him to take it away again. Anytime you're looking at those questions, reinforcement is I like the behavior. I'm doing something to want it to continue. And if I don't like it, I'm punishing it. And then I'm going to add or take away something to punish the behavior. Okay, guys, I got to let you go. I thank you so much for turning into my live event. This is my first one on Facebook. I have a lot of YouTube videos. You guys know that. If you go to YouTube, search Dr. Pam. We have tons and tons of free videos. Be sure that you subscribe so you get updated. If you're watching our videos and even today you found out, oh, this is a little harder than I thought, we definitely suggest that you sign up for any of our boot camps, our 15-week courses, our 12-week courses, or individual sessions. We have been around for about 6 years. If you don't know anything about me, do know that I have been in this field for 30 plus years. I'll be 58 in a month and 2 days. And I'm not your therapist, so I do take expensive gifts, by the way. I'm okay with that, really. It's not unethical. I'm not your therapist. So you can't take expensive gifts, right, if I'm your therapist. But really, we truly believe that that there's a calling on your life. I started this business so you don't, this stupid sheet of paper doesn't stop what I believe your higher power calls you to do. And however you see your higher power, that's totally up to you. But I definitely believe the gift I have is teaching. And my gift came from my Heavenly Father. And at the end of my life, I have to answer of what I did with my gift. What did I do to change the world? If you talk about Erickson, I'm in stagnation versus generativity. I'm worried about leaving a legacy. I don't have another 50 good years left. Let's face it. So I'm trying to leave a legacy. I want it to matter that I was on this earth. And our goal of our business really is to help you pass this test, change the world, and make some money at it. I've never bought that theory of poor social worker or poor counselor. Not at all. Not at all. And if you go back to your code of ethics, we don't ever give the sessions away for free. Never, 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 never. That's not an option. So I hope you enjoyed today. Maybe my staff will schedule another live. I've got plenty of staff. You go to our website. It's Academic Coaching for World Changers. Schedule sessions with us. Ask questions. We have open phone lines. You can speak to any of our staff during the day. My only goal is to teach and to really get you where I think that you need to be. I think that all of you are excellent, excellent people, and this is a stupid sheet of paper. And the goal is to teach you how to pass a standardized test. Everybody gets the exact same test. You can't bring you into the question. Unless the question says your first name, your last name, and your agency, the test doesn't care. It's a reading test, knowing content and knowing what the questions have asked me. It's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope that I see you soon in other classes with me. But you can do this. You can do this. You are amazing. You change the world. People are waiting for you to get this license and get it done. Thank you, guys.